Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast, brought to you by JavaPresse Coffee Company. My name is Raj Jana, and I'm the Chief Brewing Officer here at JavaPresse, where we help people make daily happiness a priority using the coffee we love. I interview people from all walks of life to discuss happiness, success, fulfillment, and ways to infuse it all into daily life. I want to dissect different thought processes and turn them into powerful insights that empower you to stay grounded and make daily happiness and fulfillment a reality. So thanks for joining me today. Now, let's get to grinding. Hello. Welcome to episode 25 of the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj. Hope you're having an amazing day, whether you're driving to work or you're cleaning your home and you're listening. Wherever you choose to listen from, just know that I'm super grateful that you're listening and that you're a part of the show and the community, and I really appreciate it. And I hope this week's episode is exactly what you need to get started, because that's how I felt after I got done listening to Miss Karen Briscoe. So Karen is the principal owner of the Huckabee Briscoe Conroy Group, HBC, with Keller Williams. Her group has been recognized by the Wall Street Journal as one of the 250 top realtor teams in the United States. And when I say that, she sold over 1,500 homes at valued over $1.5 billion since 1977. So Karen knows a little bit about selling homes, but what I wanted her to talk more about on the show, which is her recent endeavor, is the 5-minute success concept. So Karen created a concept named the 5-minute success, which is essentially her ritual and her mindset and her way of life that boils down self-development and creating a life of abundance down to 5 minutes in your day. I heard her on another podcast, and I was almost like just blown away by the concept and the simplicity of it, because I think we do a lot to overcomplicate personal development. I know I have, especially when I first got started. When I first got started, I got a little overwhelmed. I was like, I have to work out. I have to read these books. I have to journal and meditate. And there's just so much to do that I just felt overwhelmed. And overwhelm for me was a form of procrastination. I wouldn't even start because I felt like there was just so much to do. So when I heard about the 5-minute success concept that Karen has brilliantly instilled into a book and a community and her own podcast, I fell in love. I love the idea of simplifying something that's so broad, like personal development, into something that you can do within 5 minutes on a day-to-day. And Karen goes into detail on how you can use the 5-minute success concept to create just a life of momentum, movement, happiness, and just overall getting over humps of things that you either pushed off or didn't do. And Karen's awesome at this. And she definitely made me want to get off my butt and go do the things that I'd been pushing off for weeks or months or years for that matter. So I'm a big fan of Karen, and I'm just grateful that she was able to come on our show and share her wisdom. And so I know you guys are going to love this episode, and I'm super excited to get started. But before we do, if you haven't already, subscribe and review our show on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you choose to listen to our show. Give me some feedback. Leave your thoughts, especially if you don't like the show. If you love the show, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. But I want to hear from you if you don't like the show. I want to know what I can change, how we can improve. In fact, shoot me an email, chiefbrewer@javapresse.com. JavaPresse has an E at the end. And let me know. I want to know how these episodes are impacting you. I want to know what you like about them, what you don't like about them, how we can be better, how we can make this show something that really helps you get to the bottom of any mindset or anything that's holding you back. I want this show to help as many people as possible, and I want it to help you create a life that you love. And so I'm all on board. So let me know what you need, and the only way to do that is by giving me feedback. So if you haven't already, do that. But now to the juicy stuff. Without further ado, here is Miss Karen Briscoe. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Stay Grounded podcast. Oh my God. I'm so excited to have today's guest on our show. Karen, how are you?
I am excellent, and I can tell you've had your cup of coffee, Raj.
Yeah, I've had actually. So I am flying high, my friend. So super excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making the time. And yeah, so I would love to just start diving in. Tell me, we've already covered a little bit about you in the intro, but tell me a little bit more about where you're at right now. How did you get, like, just more of your story? And then obviously let's talk about the 5-minute success, because I'm super excited to dive into that.
Well, about how the origin of the 5-minute success. So I'd had for quite some time, people said that I should write a book, and I felt led to write a book, compelled to write a book. I've been successful in real estate since the early 2000s. And a lot of times when people achieve a high level of success, people want to know how they do it, right?
Yep.
And so I was contemplating this and had been working with a coach, and that was a few years ago. And a year later, I was at a mastermind coaching group, take a deep dive into one topic, and I picked the book. And I had this epiphany that it was a year later and I still hadn't written my book. And the other epiphany was the only thing stopping me from doing that was me. And I was like, wow, that was just like, it seems so simple, but it was very, very impactful, because I came back from that retreat and said, if I say writing a book is important to me, then I need to figure it out. And so then a couple of things happened along the way. I had read this book by Gretchen Rubin called Better Than Before. So you being interested in happiness, she had written The Happiness Project.
Yep.
And she had studied what people said would make them happy. And they invariably said, well, when I do this, then I'll be happy. Or when this happens, I'll do happy. And she's like, well, why don't you do it? I mean, it's like, seems pretty simple. You say you want this and you'll be happy, then why aren't you doing that? And so what she found was people needed actual skills and strategies and techniques and habits for building happiness into their life. And so one of the habits in this book, Better Than Before, was to get up an hour earlier. And there's one point in time in North America where daylight savings time is a fallback, and you actually have an hour extra that day, and your body clock's already on that hour. And so it happened to be October when this happened, this epiphany happened, and it happened to be October when daylight savings time. And I was like, that's my time. Because my limiting belief was I didn't have enough time and I didn't have enough money, and here was this time. So I committed to get up an hour early and to write my book. And that was what led me to meet Hal Elrod and The Miracle Morning. And then I put that ritual into my life as well, which has had another whole impact. But that's where the book origin is. So the idea of the 5-minute success, that came about because there are many, many books on real estate, on business, that are out there. And I was like, what I'd found is many of the people that they had this belief that they didn't have time to read a book. Yeah. Even though they knew and felt that they should do work on their personal business development, there was this time factor. And I was like, okay, well, do you have 5 minutes? And everybody said they have 5 minutes. I was like, okay, so if I wrote a book that it only took 5 minutes to read, and yet you'd get one concept every day that you could put into practice in your personal and business life, and that would then improve your happiness in your, achieving what you want to achieve, would you do it? And invariably everybody said, well, yeah, I have 5 minutes. And yes, I would do that. And so spiritual and motivational literature has done this for quite some time, right? Daily readers.
Yep.
This is a kind of a new genre for that type of what I call delivery system. It's a different delivery system. And the thing is the discovery that I've had with people is that it's actually very powerful, because traditional books, particularly business books, or what I call linear, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. The idea is, if you have a set amount of time to read, you may stop in a place that's illogical, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a daily reader and it's one page and you can take it all in and then put it into practice, you actually, what I found with many people is doing one thing and focusing on one thing a day actually has more impact than many times training and reading and actually practically anything is almost tsunami oriented.
Yep.
It's like you have too much information. In fact, you could say that about most things right now. There's too much information. So how do you discern what to focus on? And so focusing on one thing I've found for many people is very beneficial.
That's amazing. Have you read The One Thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the one thing I can do such by doing that everything else is easier or unnecessary?
Yep. That was actually one of the first books I read when I first started getting into personal development and productivity, and it made a huge impact on me. And I couldn't agree more, especially with what you said about like today's day and age. People don't have not everybody can start a book from start to finish, chapter by chapter by chapter. And I love the way your concept is all about what can I do today and just open up a new page and do it. So tell me more about the 5-Minute Success, the book itself. What kind of stuff do you like? What is that one thing that you push people to do? Is it read 5 minutes a day? Is it make time for themselves? I remember reading on the website that you even attach it to rituals. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Well, so attaching it to rituals, and I love the fact that it's a staying grounded podcast.
Yeah.
And the concept of it, because actually it's found that when you attach a new habit or behavior to an existing habit or behavior, you're more likely to be able to put it into practice and to sustain it. And so what happens is it's called habit stacking. So you stack an existing habit with a habit that you want to create, and it's kind of sticky, right? It attaches better, and you get the benefit of both. So you enjoy your cup of coffee, you spend the 5 minutes investing in your personal and business development, and then because of the fact that you're more likely to remember, because you'll remember you're going to get your cup of coffee, your book's going to be right there, habit formation is more likely to be sustained. The book actually has, believe it or not, a structure, even though every day is different, because actually my publisher told me it had to. But the other reason is it's found that there are some core elements to business and in entrepreneurship and sales. And so every day is different. So that kind of feeds into not just the sales profile of, always after the shiny object or the next, kind of squirrel phenomenon, you get distracted easily.
Yep.
But I think I would say that many people succumb to that because Google has now said that at 5 minutes is the attention span of the average American. But the idea of every day being different, it'll keep the newness fresh, but then over time it builds on itself so that then you get the core fundamentals of what will help you achieve at a higher level. And so the core concepts are the commit to get leads, which is business development, prospecting, lead generation. Everybody does that because, even dentists, they need patience.
Yep.
Right? Coffee companies need people drinking coffee, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Right? And then there's consult to sell. So there's the process. You take the customer or client through. So like, for example, if you have a coffee house where people come to enjoy their cup of coffee, but also if you have an online business, you have to take the client through a process. So that's called consult to sell. Then there are principles to take it out of just a, one hit wonder or one deal at a time, to turn it into a business and ongoing sustainable enterprise. That's called connect, build, and grow. So there are things you can do to create leverage and to create an endeavor that goes beyond just the transactional aspect. And then this fits right in with what you're doing, and that is success, thinking, activities, and vision. So it's all encompassed by that. And just kind of to unpack that a little bit, first you think the success thoughts. Could be affirmations. It could be from listening to podcasts. It could be coming from reading. Then you figure out the actions, because you have to actually do it. It's kind of like, I could think about writing a book all day long, but until I actually wrote the book. So you have to commit to the actions, and you have to do them. And then towards the vision. So you have a vision of where you want to go. And so that is all that together creates a sweet spot of success.
I love it. I want to talk more about that limiting belief that you addressed and got you into the momentum of writing the book. When that first happened, I imagine it was hard, or at least when you address the limiting belief and like, I'm the only one getting I imagine it was hard to get the rocket ship off the ground. What were some things that you did to get the party started, to make it easier for you to just keep going? And then once you build the habit, we know that it's easier to keep it. But how was that? What was that experience like, just starting something new and knowing that it was the limiting belief stopping you and you had to fundamentally change or do something different to get to the next level?
Yeah, there's a quote I love. People do not decide their futures. They decide their habits. And their habits
I love that.
Futures. So that's why it was so powerful about the habit of getting up an hour early. And I am not the only one that discovered that. I mean, if you will talk to countless, and I am not a morning person. Okay. So, and how you can ask Kyle L. Robinson, he will tell you how many people say they're not morning people. The thing is though, it's very powerful, because when you make a commitment and you truly commit to something, then to see it through, if there's a habit associated with it, it's more likely to be sustainable, because the studies have been shown that people's willpower is a finite quantity. And as time goes, as the day progresses, the ability to get yourself to do something just by willpower decreases. Yeah. So that's why starting in the morning, and, the reason why it's called a priority is because it's prior. It's the first thing. It's like what you put your attention on is what is going to expand. And so I propelled myself out of bed with the knowledge that I, first of all, made the commitment, but then once I made the commitment, then I built the habit. And there's a lot of research on habit formation. We kind of talked about that. Another study is about how long it takes to build a habit. Yeah. And there's lots of research on it, but the one that I seem to find is written by The Power of Habit. And it's
Charles Duhigg, yep.
Yes. Okay. You know Charles. So the idea that 66 days is what they found, a lot of people, if you could focus on it for 66 days. So the first 22 days is you're really like an evangelist. Okay. So like, you met anybody?
Yourself up,
yeah. I mean, like you've met anybody that's got a Peloton or is in the Whole30.
Yeah.
I mean, listen to those people. I mean, they are evangelists. They are excited about what they're doing. And I was telling everybody I was writing a book. And so there is something to be said to putting that commitment out there. I set a date. I set about, meeting everybody I knew and talking to everybody I knew, written a book. And I put in, again, back to it wasn't just that I thought about writing a book, I put into action the activities writing a book. Then the next 22 days is kind of an evaluation period. People are going like, I'm not sure I want to get up an hour early. Write a book, right? So you have to push through that. It's like a kind of a dip, if you will. And then the next 22 days often is what actually you're going to get propelled into sustaining the habit. And so it's kind of a virtuous cycle that starts to happen after 22 days. You get the benefits of the habit. You get the benefits of achieving what you said you wanted to achieve, right? Yeah. And so I would say that it was the case for me. So this all started early October in 2015. And so by the time I had gotten 2 months into it, I had really cemented the habit. And then by then I was deep enough into it that I wasn't going to stop at that point. I was seeing that it works, and B, again, back to the virtuous cycle. I was seeing the benefits of me actually doing what I said I wanted to do. That is very empowering.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that you used accountability. I mean, you said evangelist. I say accountability in the beginning, telling other people, being excited about it, pumping yourself up. I think that's so important. I think that most people forget that. They're like, oh, I'll just keep it to myself, or I'll write it down and I'm going to do it and I'll look at it every day. And that has some merit to it. But I think talking about it, telling it, that's such a brilliant way to kind of trick yourself into being excited. What are some other tips that you have in that phase? Because that's like the hardest phase for me when I'm starting something new. Is kind of sticking to it. I'm excited about it for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden, for my cycle is not even 60. It's like
you're not making it to 60.
So the 10 days, I'm super excited, and then the next 10 days is when I start to question. So how do you what are some things that you did in that questioning phase? For you, it was that second 20 days where you're like, do I want to do this? You haven't really seen the benefits yet, but you're kind of there. What did you do to keep yourself moving in those days when you felt down, or when you felt like, oh, I don't really want to do this? Is this really worth it? I've spent already 20 days on this. Like, what did you do to keep yourself going?
So I had a benefit of actually seeing what happens when you sustain good habits, in the sense that for my industry, lead generation, and I would say that's true with most businesses. And now that I lead generate for podcasting and lead generate for the book, I'm like, these principles all apply. Yeah. And that is tracking. So for writing the book, I tracked some people track how many words they write. I mean, you can, Google other famous authors, and they literally, they even like Hemingway, they'll say they went back and look at Hemingway's manuscripts, and you could tell that he was like, I'm writing 1,000 words today. And like, he would like, stop, literally. You got to 1,000, stop, So I tracked because my book was a daily reader, I tracked how many days I had written. So how many, what I called stories. So, or entries. And so when I got to that number, then I was like, okay, I'm done. And so it was, the other aspect to tracking, the benefit of tracking, is that it's a self-accountability. So you can track either on activity. So like you can say, okay, for example, writing a book, I'm writing 5 pages a day. So you can front load that kind of tracking. You can say, okay, I know I'm going to be out of town for 2 days, and the likelihood I'm going to write is pretty slim. So I'm going to work ahead, and that means I'm going to have to write, so many extra pages per day. Or you can do what's called backfill, and you can fill back in. One of the best, I think, examples is the one that comes from Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, I know this one actually. Yeah.
You know this one?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So the wall calendar.
Yep.
I use a Google spreadsheet, but the old-fashioned wall calendar, where you give yourself whatever it is you're tracking. When you've done it, you take the marker and you mark through that calendar day on the wall calendar. And the idea is to not break the chain, because there's something that I guess, and again, in habit formation of the consistency, because there's like any diet or exercise program or whatever, when you stop, you give yourself that day off or whatever, then oftentimes you lose that momentum. You lose the habit, if you will. So those are a few. I employ all of them. I would say, those are probably the key. The tracking and the don't break the chain is probably two of the, and I find that other people that achieve success at a high level, they do similar things.
I love that. Karen, I had a question that's been brewing, pun intended, in my head. So you're obviously very accomplished, successful in real estate. Why did you feel like it required a different mindset to be a successful writer? Why did that success in one area of life not just automatically translate to the other?
Well, I would say that it does. And that's where I was saying about the fact that what I found that worked for success in real estate sales, those principles I find apply. And that's why the 5-minute success principles I find apply in a lot of people's businesses and lives and entrepreneurs is that, but the reason why I wanted to expand is because, kind of twofold. One, I felt like I had a voice. I'd had a number of people, again, that had mentioned several times, your stories really resonate. I remember them. Because I remember them, I actually can do them when I need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, so what's the value of information or inspiration if it doesn't come to you when you need it and to be able to apply it, right? So I found that was occurring. And so that led me to, oftentimes, again, when people achieve a high level, they're like, okay, it's time to make a contribution back, right? Because I have achieved this level of success, and I wanted to give back. And the format of the book, and then that's actually how the podcast came about, was because in writing the book, I would be asked to be on podcasts with great shows like yours. And I found that, that was reaching a whole different group of folks other than what my normal sphere in the real estate space. And when that impact was starting to be, reverberate back, I said, wow. So kind of like you, there's a lot of other people out there that are achieving success at a high level in business and life. And wouldn't it be amazing if they shared their 5-minute success principles? Yeah. So I think that's, I still sell real estate. That's my primary business and livelihood. And I still find the mission to be very empowering to impact and improve people's lives. Yeah. But I've also found that, wow, this is like a whole nother sphere of influence, if you will, that is out there. And I learned so much. I think that sometimes industries can become incestuous is the best way I could describe it. Like, do the same thing, say the same thing, act the same way. I was like, is there no creativity here? I mean, like, let's kind of think, outside the box, if you will. Yeah. And so it's a way to expand into other areas. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, you answered it brilliantly. I just think it's so fascinating that I've always felt like once you achieve a certain level of success, you almost like what got you somewhere isn't going to get you somewhere else. And so it's this consistent level, like you were so successful, but you had to wake up an hour earlier in order for you to start writing your book. So like just that itself, I think that's what I was so I guess curious about in your own life and how that showed up.
I'm sure you've heard Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
And the idea that we have, these core needs, they're physical needs, and then we have self-esteem needs and connectional needs. And then the top need is to self-actualize and to become our highest and best self. In real estate, when real estate's being used at its peak performance, if you will, or what it was designed to do, that's when it's at its highest and best use. And I think that applies with people, and I find that it applies with myself. And those people, self included, if you're reaching for what your highest and best potential is or highest and best use is, that is an ongoing striving. I don't think there's an arriving.
Yeah.
Okay. So the striving is part of the thriving, if you will, and you're not really ever going to arrive. And that is really actually at my age in life, I'm at the other half. And the more I go into those spaces that are new and outside my comfort zone, and I'm like going to where, kind of like what Wayne Gretzky said, going to where the puck is going, I'm going to where it's going. It's like that is where, the magic happens.
Absolutely. So it's in the process, not the destination.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
And I think that there's another great book. Elaine Gilbert wrote The Big Magic.
Yeah.
And that was another part of my epiphany on writing the book, because in that book, she talks about how there are all these ideas in the universe and an abundance of ideas, and they'll come to people. And it's kind of like, okay, it came to you. So did you do it? This wasn't one of my other part of my epiphanies that really made me, when I said I had the epiphany that I had to write the book, but that created the urgency of why I had to do it then or now and not wait, is because the idea will come. And if the person says, oh, I don't have the time or I don't have the money, which was mine was time, and that it'll go find somebody, because if its time has come for the idea to come into the universe, then it's going to go find somebody that's going to make it happen.
Oh my gosh.
Going to manifest it. And I was actually on an airplane when I was reading that. I was like, oh my gosh, not only do I have to write my book, I have to write it now. And that created this internal urgency that if out there in that space, there's supposed to be the 5-minute success concept, and that's going to empower people, and somebody's going to do it, but it's going to be me.
I am like, that was probably one of my favorite things I think I've ever heard anybody say. That's so true. Oh my gosh. When you have inspiration, you're right. It's not just you having this inspiration. The inspiration is coming to you for a reason, and you're not doing it any service. If you don't take action on it, someone else will.
Absolutely. I mean, think about this podcast. I mean, what inspired you to create the Staying Grounded podcast?
It was, I had a mentor who worked actually for about 37 years for the same company. And when I was building JavaPresse, I was working full time. So I was working a full-time job and building JavaPresse. And this mentor, he had 3 months left until retirement, and he had a heart attack and died 3 months before retirement. And it made me realize that we're all just shooting for tomorrow, forgetting to live today. And so I wanted to create the podcast as a way of helping people bring back a focus to creating their best life today, as opposed to tomorrow. And so that's how it came about. And I just realized what you said was so profound for me, at least, in just that you're right. If I wouldn't have done this, somebody else would have experienced the same thing, and somebody else would have either had a choice to make whether they wanted to take action and put this message to the masses, or whether it was just going to be something that they kept to themselves. And I don't know what caused me to take action, but I did. And here we are. But oh my gosh, I just want to give you a hug right now.
Well, now that you've done that, okay, so now think about this. You now have this muscle memory of what that feels like.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote my first book, it was painful. It really was. I mean, it's like stretching a muscle you haven't stretched in a long time. I mean, pushing outside my comfort zone and doing things that were not, in my skill set that I was, achieving at a high level and very comfortable with. So when the podcast idea came to me, my book was a year old. And my book said it wanted a podcast, and I'm like, whoa, this is another one of these big magic things. I'm sure of it. I didn't just have this thing happen. And I moved faster the second time. And so that's where I would say the people that really self-actualize and achieve at a higher level, they move faster. And that will do one of two things. You will either find out faster that it doesn't work, so you'll fail forward faster, right?
Yeah.
Or you will move at light speed, because you will recognize that these opportunities are they come along and they're coming to you for a reason, and that's why it's put on your heart or mind or whatever, however it's coming to you. There's a reason why, and you'll live into it faster. That's what I've discovered.
And
I think you'll find the same thing.
I love that. I'm going to start being more aware of that. So I imagine we'll have to follow up on this conversation. But I do want to say this. So when you have a stroke of genius, obviously there's fear that's on the other side of that, right? So how do you address the fear in a constructive way? How do you use the fear when these, because obviously and I want to hear your take on it, because when an idea happens, you have this inspiration and you're like, oh, I want to do something about it. But then all of a sudden it's what about this? What about this? What about this? Oh, I can't do this. So how do you challenge that self-talk and still go forward?
Well, there's two things that I've learned, and it's a learned behavior. Okay. So I think people think, the people that, power through, they're like, that came to them naturally. No, people learned this. So
yeah.
one is that use the fear as excitement. So, and you'll find this in theater and people that speak publicly, they will share that they too feel those feelings, that energy. It's like going, okay, I really do. But if you use it as excitement and use that to propel you into action.
Yeah.
And I would say get into action. So that's one reason why habits are so powerful, because if you stop and think about it too long, then you'll talk yourself out of it, right? So you tell the prosecuting attorney, inner critic off and say, okay, so, turn on the ways that it can work. Okay.
Yeah.
So because I used to think, I'm being so realistic. And this was something Hal Elrod said, and he shared, and he has been through many more, life events that would stop somebody, right?
Yeah.
Than I have, because, he almost died in a car accident. And then, he also had his business, with the markets crash, his business crashed too, and he had to rebuild. And then, recent health issues. So he said, okay, well, why is that more realistic to think negatively? Okay, so like what benefit is that? I mean, why not put the energy and the time into focusing on what will work and how it can work? And that, what you focus on expands, will expand the opportunity. And I'm not saying there aren't things you should stop doing if they're not working and not effective. And so I'm not saying that means that you don't recognize that reality. But at the same time, what makes that more real than the reality of what the future could be if you live into it as if it is now?
That you're right. It's a choice.
It is. It's a choice. You have a choice. And I have a choice, and we all are choosing every moment, and the muscle will get stronger the more you choose the ones that are affirming what you want to accomplish. And then the other ones will just go away and, or lessen in some way, or because you aren't focusing on it, they're not going to expand.
Absolutely. So what are some things you do every day to sort of practice this muscle?
Well, I would highly recommend the Miracle Morning Routine, because it has been proven by hundreds of thousands of people. And even before Hal Elrod put together the Savers, these are all been, time tested through millennial. But the Savers, if you're not familiar with it, is an acronym for the things that makes for a good morning routine. And the first one is silence or meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. And so I find that a morning routine, and people say, I don't have enough time. And I'm like, well, so back to if you have 5 minutes. So it could actually be done in 6 minutes. You can do, 1 minute for each and have a power one. So the idea is you decide, you make the commitment, and then that will in turn. So I kind of do it as part of my morning ritual with my cup of coffee, and reading is, I read some motivational, spiritual literature and business and personal development books, but I also then read 5 Minute Success. And that's a great segue for me getting into the business mindset for the day. So you can even incorporate exercise. I do stretches while my coffee is, brewing. These things don't have to. I think that people sometimes overcomplicate. And so make it so that you can do it. And what you will do it, you're more likely to sustain.
I love that. So would you say that your daily happiness is in your routines?
Absolutely. I think that happiness is a byproduct of achieving, well, first of all, living the life you love.
Yeah.
Okay. And then while you create and achieve the life of your dreams. So I think happiness is a byproduct of that. And so it requires actual action. It's kind of like back to what Gretchen Rubin said. She's like, okay, you too could be happy if you're doing what you say you want to do. So set up so that you're doing that.
I love that. So you just said that. So you just said something, doing what you say you're going to do. I think that's such a powerful concept, because when you see yourself accomplish the things you say you're going to do, you feel fulfillment and you feel happier. And so I know myself, I have small things that I put on my plate intentionally, like whether it be make my bed, or small things like, just write down 3 things I'm grateful for, or very small things. And then I'll make a point to check it off, because that makes me feel like I kept a promise to myself. Do you have any things like that you kind of have in your day that are like for days where you have something, either you plan something really big, Like you're like, oh, I'm going to do this really big thing and it kind of falls short. Do you have things that you do to kind of make yourself feel good about what you did anyways?
So I think gratitude, I would agree, is definitely a key component to recognizing when the good in life is occurring and what you want to create in your life that will then you're thankful for and that you can recognize. And so I actually use the 5-minute journal. I think you've also had those folks on the
not
podcast.
The 5-minute journals, but I use a similar.
The best self. Okay. Yeah. So there's lots of great, again, I would encourage people not to like get so focused on exactly what it is. It's more a matter of what you're doing. But the idea of thinking of the things that you're grateful for in the morning and then bookending it at night to think about what you happened during that day. And I think that a practice of gratitude is because there's things that happen every day to everybody that aren't necessarily on the top 5 of what you'd want to have happen in the day, but you can also, some of it is how you reflect upon it. And if you reflect upon it on what you can learn, grow, or take away from, then it can become empowering for the next day and so on. So I think that the people, I think sometimes think it's the big things that are what makes life meaningful, and many times it's the daily rituals, the daily relationships that are where true meaning comes from.
And I think I completely agree with you on that. And I think it's really because when you learn to appreciate the little things, they happen more and more and more. And so when you bring your attention back to the little things that you're grateful for, whether it be a happy family or, a great job or the opportunities you have, whatever it may be, I just feel like it's a muscle that attracts and it's like a magnet. And so when you're grateful, you almost like gratitude, being grateful allows you to attract more stuff that allows you to be more grateful. And it's like this hamster wheel of positivity that just never stops running.
Yes, what you focus on expands. It does attract. It's not necessarily, though, a tit for tat or I do this and then this is going to happen. Yeah. And that's where I think sometimes people are like, oh, but I was grateful today, and so why didn't things happen? I think it's because as it doesn't change the other people, and it doesn't even really change the situation. It changes you. So it's an inside job. And what you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on the things you're grateful for, then it'll expand what you see to be great, that you can be grateful for. And it also is more likely to attract other people in situations. We in our business, we're grateful for all of our clients, but there are certain clients that you come into our lives and we're like, oh my gosh, this is, we would like to have more of you. And so we focus on that because it's very tempting to focus on the problems and the situations that are challenging, and we rise to the occasion and we obviously provide the best service we can. The thing is if we're constantly focusing on that, then that is what's going to expand. And so I think that that's where a practice, and if you think about anything else you practice, right? Practice means that there's not an arrival point. You're always finding new ways to, if it's exercise, if it's meditation practice, you're always finding ways. And so I would say the same thing about gratitude. You always find ways to expand that.
That's brilliant. Karen, if this has been such a helpful and enriching conversation, I'm enjoying the heck out of this. Just by the way, if you can't tell by my smile.
Absolutely, me as well. I find it's kind of like masterminds, and the purpose, I think one of the beauties of masterminds is that I have a lot of these experiences and thoughts as well, but it's in talking through it with you that then I really can form how it can impact myself and others as well.
I completely agree. So if anyone on the audience wants to learn more about the 5-minute success, more about you, where can they go? How can they get involved with your world?
Well, so a couple of great ways. The number 5 Minute Success. That's the website. And so you can reach out to me that way. The book is available on Amazon, and it's also available in Audible. The Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day, or 5 Minute Success. You should be able to find it that way. We have a Facebook group. So
Awesome.
That is a great way to connect with the community. One of the outcomes of writing the book and having the community is I realized we're all reading the same page every day. And so it's really powerful when other people are sharing their ahas and observations. And we also have other, the podcast episodes are up there. So other ways to connect and get more content related to 5 Minute Success.
I love that. Love that. And we will definitely make all of these resources available on our website. Karen, I have one last question that I ask all of our wonderful guests. And in the midst of everything you've achieved, from where you came from to where you are now, how do you stay grounded on a daily basis?
I think that it is, as Jim Rohn said, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. So it's practicing the disciplines every day. That's how I stay grounded.
I love that. It's such a simple concept, and it's everyone's always looking for that next shiny big thing.
They are.
But
Just go back to the basics.
Success leaves clues, and you've left so many on this podcast episode. Karen, I just want to take another moment to say thank you so much for your time. For everyone who's interested in learning more about 5 Minute Success and everything that Karen does, we will give all these resources on the website, so keep an eye out for that. But guys, that's a wrap for another episode of the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj, and this is Karen. And until next time, stay grounded. We will chat with you soon. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of the Stay Grounded podcast, brought to you by JavaPresse Coffee Company. My name is Raj, and I hope you found this interview helpful as you create your own ways to make daily happiness a priority. If you're interested in learning more about how your morning coffee can turn into a consistent source of joy in your life, visit www.javapresse.com to learn how our products can help you do that, and use the coupon code PODCAST for 10% off your purchase. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Stay grounded.